It was a dark and stormy night, the kind of night that made you want to stay indoors and curl up under a blanket. But for Sarah, it was just another night of babysitting. She had been looking after the Johnsons' little girl, Emily, for a few hours when she heard a strange noise coming from upstairs. It sounded like footsteps, but she knew she was the only one in the house. She tried to brush it off as her imagination, but the sound persisted. Sarah decided to investigate, making her way up the creaky stairs, feeling her heart pounding in her chest. As she reached the top, she saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was tall and dark, and its eyes glowed in the darkness. "Who are you?" Sarah asked, trying to sound brave. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it started moving towards her, slowly at first, and then with increasing speed. Sarah turned and ran back down the stairs, but the figure was right behind her. She could hear its heavy breathing and feel its cold breath on her neck. She stumbled and fell, her ankle twisting painfully as she hit the ground. The figure loomed over her, its eyes burning into hers. Suddenly, the lights went out, and Sarah was plunged into darkness. She screamed for help, but no one came. She was alone with the figure in the darkness. For what felt like hours, Sarah lay there, paralyzed with fear, waiting for something to happen. But the figure didn't move, it just stood there, watching her. Eventually, the lights flickered back on, and Sarah saw that the figure was gone. She got up and limped towards the door, desperate to get out of the house. But as she reached the door, she heard a whisper in her ear, "I'll always be here, waiting for you." Sarah turned around to see the figure standing right behind her, its eyes glowing in the darkness. She screamed and ran out of the house, never looking back. Years went by, but Sarah could never shake off the terror of that night. She had trouble sleeping and would often wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, with the image of the figure burned into her mind. As she grew older, Sarah became more and more reclusive, avoiding crowds and staying indoors as much as possible. She never spoke about the incident to anyone, fearing they would think she was crazy. One night, as Sarah was sitting alone in her apartment, she heard a knock at the door. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should answer, but curiosity got the better of her, and she walked towards the door. When she opened it, she saw a figure standing in front of her, the same one from that terrifying night so many years ago. It was still tall and dark, its eyes glowing in the darkness. Sarah tried to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. The figure stepped forward, and Sarah could feel its cold breath on her face. "I've been waiting for you," it whispered. Sarah closed her eyes, expecting the worst, but when she opened them again, the figure was gone. She was alone in her apartment once more. She didn't know what to make of it. Was it just her imagination, or was the figure really there? She tried to shake off the feeling of unease that had settled over her, but it lingered, like a dark cloud hanging over her head. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that she was being watched. She started seeing the figure everywhere, in her dreams, on the street, even in her own reflection. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She went to see a psychiatrist, hoping to find some relief from the terror that had taken over her life. The psychiatrist listened to her story, nodding sympathetically. When Sarah was finished, she said, "I think I know what's going on. You're suffering from a condition called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. It's common among people who have experienced traumatic events, like the one you described." Sarah was both relieved and terrified. She was relieved that there was a name for what she was going through, but terrified at the thought that the figure might not be real. But deep down, she knew it was real. The figure had left an indelible mark on her mind, and she would never be able to forget it. Sarah's life became a constant battle against her fear. She tried therapy, medication, even hypnosis, but nothing could shake off the feeling that the figure was still out there, waiting for her. In the end, Sarah decided to confront her fear head-on. She went back to the Johnsons' house, the site of that terrifying night so many years ago, and she faced the figure once and for all. It was the bravest thing she had ever done, and it was also the last. When they found her, she was lying on the floor, her eyes wide open, her face frozen in terror. No one knows what happened in that house that night, but Sarah's story lives on as a cautionary tale about the dangers of fear, and the lengths we will go to conquer it.